as a fruitcake, goofy as a goon,
and silly as a loon. Some call it pretty,
others call it crazy,
but they all sing this tune. Daisy dotes and dozy dotes and little lambsy divey, a kiddly-divey do, wouldn't you? Daisy dotes and dozy dotes and little lambsy divey, a kiddly-divey do, wouldn't you? If the words sound queer and funny to your ear, a little bit jumbled and jivey, sing mares eat oats and does eat oats and little lambs eat ivy. Oh, mares eat oats and does eat oats and little lambs eat ivy, a kiddly-divey do, wouldn't do, a kiddly-divey do. Dotes and dozy dotes and little lambsy divey,
a
kiddly-divey do,
wouldn't you? There's you,
dotes and dozy
dotes and little
lambsy divey,
a
kiddly-divey do,
wouldn't you?
If the words sound queer, funny to your ear, a little bit mumbled and tumbled and jumbled and jivey, sing mares eat oats, does eat oats, little lambs eat ivy.
There's you,
Dotes and dozy
dotes and little
lambsy divey,
a
kiddly-divey do,
wouldn't you?
a kiddly-divey do, wouldn't you? Dozy dotes and little lambsy divey, a kiddly-divey do, wouldn't you? 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 A kiddly-divey too, wouldn't you?
It was just a neighborhood dance, that's all that it was, but oh, what it seemed to be. It was like a masquerade ball, with costumes and all, 'cause you were at the dance with me.
It was just a ride on a train, that's all that it was, but oh, what it seemed to be. It was like a trip to the stars, to Venus and Mars, 'cause you were on the train with me.
And when I kissed you, darling, it was more than just a thrill for me.
It was the promise, darling, of the things that fate had willed for me.
Now it was just a wedding in June, that's all that it was, but oh, what it seemed to be. It was like a royal affair, with everyone there, 'cause you brought all the world to me.
And when I kissed you, darling, it was more than just a thrill for me.
It was a promise, darling, of the things that fate had willed for me.
Morning, everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit today about the series that we discussed last night. I've had a little bit of time to think about it, make some notes. It was really great to have those guys on last night, and or actually just do the meeting. Because it's actually not. I didn't have them on. It's just a meeting. I'm streaming this to both my channel and the Smallbore Group's channel at the same time, so you can watch it in either place. And I'm just going to kind of go over my impressions of the meeting from just having been in it, and some of the things that and I'm probably what I'm going to do is I'll end up being able to express what my initial going into it, what my thoughts were versus what the reality ended up being, and it's interesting to me that you know the idea of racing V twin um, industrial motor powered small tiny airplanes has never entered my mind, but it sounds really cool, and I think that there's a lot of upside to this, and part of that is the um, the cost is it should be really good. I mean, on all levels, the cost will be very expensive, very inexpensive, not just to build the plane, but to fly it. You're talking about a plane that you can build, hopefully in sub 300 hours, right? So, it'd be nice to be able to have somebody that could um, have an airplane, a dedicated guy or a couple of guys that are going, building one airplane. I think the target ought to be about 300 hours build time. And I think that with most of the small airplanes that are tube frame or um, uh, sheet metal composite, that's certainly doable, especially when we look at we're not putting exotic interiors in these airplanes. We're not um, spending a lot of extra time making them super expensive looking, and no $30,000 suites of electronics that you have to figure out how you're going to put in there and make it weigh something. So that's pretty impressive in and of itself, right? And we're going to dive into that. I'm going to start off with that. It really was a heck of a meeting. I mean, the attendance was not what I thought it would be. I think that I was honestly expecting like way more people, because there was a lot of advance notice that we were going to do it, and then there was a couple of days notice of the actual time of doing it, and then 4 to 6 hours, for people to kind of plan to be there. And I honestly thought that there was a lot more interest than what kind of ended up actually showing up. Now, things happen. Thursday night's kind of an I think Thursday night's a perfect night, but for some people it may be an odd night, an off night, I guess. And so you can't really do anything about that. You just kind of work within the frame that you have. And so at the end of the day, I was happy with the guys that did show up. The guys that did show up had very good comments. They were very smart, and they were really um, they really know they really know the space, right? Like they really understand what they're talking about. So again, it would have been nice to have had maybe 12, 13, 14 people, maybe more, to kind of throw ideas out. But maybe the number we had was kind of perfect because we had a guy that didn't know anything about air racing really, which is me. And we had a guy that had actually been an air racer, uh, Bill Victor Bravo. And then we had McCrae, who is I think he's some kind of engineer. That dude is smart. I don't know what he does, but he's a very sharp fellow, and had a lot of the numbers. And of course, we had Leon, who was more or less just kind of a he had technology problems yesterday, and he had a lot of problems with um, I guess with his headset. And then when he did get in, he had a mic, and he could hear us. but his mic had a lot of background noise, a lot of feedback, some popping, and or whatever, and so he just he muted his mic and he would communicate via messaging, which was fine, and we were able to. We didn't get all that I felt like we needed to out of Leon. I think Leon has a real, I know that he will probably decline that this is accurate, but I think that he has a lot of really good things to say and a lot of good ideas. And honestly, he's he and Victor Bravo are really the driving force, I think, behind this um, Formula I um, package. So, all that said, I was left with kind of the following impressions. I think the engine and airframe packages, honestly, which I thought, if you read it in the forum, you would think that that would be the thing that we're going to take months of arguing to get to, but I don't believe that's the case. I think that the actual case is that um, that stuff's not going to matter at all. I mean, the engine package honestly is super simple. It's super easy to understand. At least initially starting out, there just doesn't need to be a lot of. I don't think the engine package is going to matter, right? Like I don't believe that, at least in the beginning, that you're going to have to police the engine package very much, except to make sure they're safe, obviously. Um, but I don't think that we're going to have quite the problems that I had in mind to start with. Now I could be wrong, and I probably am, but I really feel like that's a space where it's not going to matter. You know what I mean? So, and that kind of brings us to the considered airframes. And I in my mind had maybe a little bit different scenario going on, but I kept my mind really open and I really just more or less listened. And I think what Victor Bravo had to say is exactly right. Um, I I think the airframe, the format of the actual plane needs to be pretty much wide open. As long as it's a safe airplane and you can demonstrate it's a safe airplane, which we'll get to in a minute. But as long as it's going to be a safe airplane and you feel comfortable flying it and it can physically perform the maneuvers that are required, who cares? There should be a minimum weight so people aren't showing up in 65-pound, sticks with a seat mounted. So there probably needs to be a minimum weight. I'm being facetious there. I know. Um, there needs to be a minimum weight and there needs to be a maximum weight. And so if there's any way to kind of if there's any way to kind of make that all work, at least initially, I think it's really good. And I don't see the problem that I had seen before. Before I thought that we needed basically three or four designs and that would encourage people to build. But the reality is, and listening to the other guys talk about it, a guy can. I think the philosophy of the building of the airplane is different than my typical philosophy because I'm a race car guy, and we build race cars in shops, we build race cars in backyards, we build them in garages, but they're all kind of built the same way. Everybody, within reason. But we're really looking at this as a guy can build it in his barn with a hacksaw and some tin snips and um, and a arbor press, maybe a sheet metal bender, or maybe he goes somewhere and gets a sheet metal bender. I mean, but just a guy can build it in a barn, another guy can build it in a garage, another guy can build it on his carport. And if maybe one guy's really good with composites, and so he builds a composite plane. Another guy's really good with tube and fabric. He builds a tube and fabric plane. I like it. There's probably going to have to be some wing area calculations made, and smarter people than I am are going to do that. And I think that that's really good. But I'm not. I'm certainly not the guy for that. But I think that that's all good, and I think that that kind of brought us to the considered airframes or airframe types, right? And and there was a little, there's a little bit of this, it's always interesting how people get into the weeds right out of the gate, because what they'll do is they'll say something like, somebody will say something like, well, it's a Moni type short wing airplane. That plane, when they tested it, went so fast, blah blah blah. And somebody will say, well, they never made one, or they only made one and didn't fly that well, or whatever. Well, we're not actually talking about building a Moni short wing airplane or taking an existing Moni motor glider and cutting the wings down. What we're talking about is that type of construction, that type of airplane, kind of the same size. Personally, having kind of listened and gone back and read through, which I did this morning, I went back and I read through a bunch of the information that I had, that I kind of just skimmed through before. And it's interesting because the Moni is a V-tail, and I think you could build a Moni V-tail, right? But I personally perceive that at least the first few will be Moni-like with T-tail or a conventional tail or a V-tail. It's builder's choice, what they feel comfortable with and what they feel like will suit the course that we'll be running on. So, and the same thing said of the Quickie, right? Like, we're not going to actually go find a Quickie in somebody's hangar somewhere and buy one and bring it out and just race it. Although I think you could do that because it fits the rules, I think it would fit the rules that we come up with. But I don't know that it'd be very competitive because I think it'd be a little big, may have a little bit too, you're trading drag for wing loading and whatever. But pardon me. Excuse me. I don't know where that came from. So, but maybe it's not a Quickie, but maybe it's like a Dragonfly, right? Maybe it's a single seat Dragonfly that has the shorter front canard and the larger rear wing and turns a little better, bigger, more effective rudder. I don't know. I'm not an aerodynamicist, but I pictured this as kind of the way that's going to go. The same thing with like a Sonoray or Midget Mustang style airplane. It could be aluminum, could be tube and fabric or whatever. It could be like a KR1. You could downsize the KR1 a little bit, cut some weight out of it, and it could be composite or wood and aluminum and just a hodgepodge of materials, whatever you had laying around your farm or shop or your apartment building. And then there's the AR5, which plans don't even exist for, and I think that'd be a great design. As a matter of fact, if I were going to build one, I'd be very torn between a canard configuration and that AR5. That AR5, it's a great looking airplane, and obviously it's super efficient. There are no plans for it that I'm aware of. Maybe there are, and I'm just not in that, and I don't travel in the right circles. But but you could take the pictures of that, and you could sit down and draw it out, do some math, go to maybe send it to an engineer, say, hey, give me an idea of what's going on, pick a wing profile, whatever. It gives people room to tinker. And generally, I'm anti-tinker because I think tinkerers never actually make anything. There's always something that they're tinkering with. There's no finished product, but maybe this might be a case where I'm absolutely wrong, and I think that that's how that's going to be. So, in kind of in closing on that, I think that the engine and airframe rules are going to be the easiest part of the whole thing. Like, without a doubt, it's going to be the easiest portion of it, right? So we'll see. And of course, there will be arguing about rules. There's never any shortage of arguing over rules, but I think we can get there. So that those two things are really good, and all of the discussion around how we might approach this, like just from a safety point of view, you would need to sandbag the aircraft, document it. And you may have to do it at the event so that we know that when we let you out on the course, the airplane is going to be safe, and you'd have to have that sandbagged I would say that it could go either way. You could be doing it at the event at the track or or airfield, or you could do it at home with someone there, an official of some kind to make sure that that's the actual wing you're using and that whatever. But I think sandbagging the airplanes to prove that they'll take the G load. I like that, and I liked what Victor Bravo had to say about the tech guys that would come and as you're setting up, they're crawling around all of the airplanes, and they're talking. That they talk to the pilot, they talk to the technicians, and they're crawling all through these airplanes and are looking at everything. And if they get um, a hinky feeling where they don't know that airplane they can't um, they may feel have a bad feeling about it, that airplane doesn't get to race. And so I really liked what he said about that, because sometimes you just know and sometimes you don't. And so I think the tech inspector portion of it I really had kind of identified with, and I feel like that's going to be a major component, um, and would have the um, you would be able to see what that is. So I think that's all that stuff's really good. All and that kind of appeals to me as for my career in racing and some of the organization. I think that everything that was said last night was pretty spot on, and even when we disagreed, we were able to narrow down. So I think that's all good stuff. Um, with the where and the how, there's going to be a lot of discussion. I really liked what Victor Bravo had to say about the smaller airfields that are kind of maybe a little bit more out of the way, that are not able to get FAA approval in the current environment, um, to have an air show, because the other airplanes are the Formula One airplanes are too fast, the sportsman class are too fast, the courses need to be too big, there's a highway in the way, whatever. But these small bore planes that run on a tighter course, the speeds are a little bit, they are slower speeds that were anticipated. Um, it could just be just from a safety perspective. It may just put the airplanes in front of a lot more people that don't get to see something in the same way. And I liked everything he had to say about that. And I'll in the description later, I will put a link back to the original, to the video from last night. And when he gets to, scroll through, and when you get to that part, listen to what he's saying, because it's really important stuff. What he's talking about with the airplanes and the crowds. And of course, from my point of view, um, I would actually prefer them over racetracks. I think that racing airplanes over auto racing racetracks makes a lot of sense. I feel like that if you're going to, you're already out in the middle of nowhere a lot of times, especially with club racing tracks. There are no power lines. There's none of this stuff to have issues with, and I think you could do it pretty well. At the end of the day, if we're gonna if we're gonna go forward with the series, which it looks like that it will happen. I really got a great feeling last night in the meeting that it will happen, because the people behind it are really smart. The concept is sound, and the barrier to entry is very low. Now, another thing in the how category, kind of, you know, in the how category is like, who gets to fly this, who gets to race these airplanes, and how much time do you need? Do you need time and type? And some thought had already been put into that. Now, I really like the concept of, if you build one of these airplanes, so you get a wild hair, you see the videos, you talk, you listen to me, you listen to the other guys, you read all through all the threads, and you get really excited, and you want to build one of these little airplanes. And you take your 10 grand or 12 grand or whatever it is, and you build one of the airplanes, and it takes you 3, 4, 5 months to do it. You and your buddies, you bring it out. Well, first of all, you have to test fly it. You're going to do all your test flying and all of that kind of thing, and you're going to get everything balanced, and you're going to make sure you don't have flutter and all that kind of stuff. So once you have a viable airplane, or you've rented a viable airplane or whatever, you show up to an event having never done an air race before. In that case, more than likely what's going to happen is you're going to get in you're going to get in your plane, and you're going to fly the closed course under close scrutiny. There may be a chase plane involved. Under close scrutiny, you're going to have experienced aviators looking at you to see if you're capable of doing what we're asking you to do, which is to fly. And then you would have to have formation training or close formation training. And there's some other things that we talked about last night with like an in cockpit collision avoidance alert, which would be triggered by ground crew to let you know that that maybe you can't see an airplane that's above you, or kind of to the side of you, where you can't physically look there and do what you're doing. So I thought that was really good. All of the comments about the safety aspect of it and the training aspect of it, I really liked, and I think that that's where we need to go with it. I really feel like that I really feel like the autocross concept of letting guys come out that have never done it before, where they get in their plane, they take off, they do a hot lap around the course, maybe with a chase plane, maybe with, or, a plane flying overhead to, watch what they're doing and video it, and letting them land, and then evaluating that. And then, some guys, it'll take maybe 2 or 3 hours of doing these course trials before they're good to go, right? We know that they're going to be safe. It may take another guy 8 hours of doing it to get to the point where we know he's safe. And some people may never get to the point where we think, yeah, this guy's going to be safe out there. And I think that the way that we're looking at it, again, none of this stuff is set in stone yet. All of this stuff is evolving almost daily. So none of it's set in stone, but the way we're looking at it is really good, and it's really sharp and really focused. So I expect really good things, even from the start. And then, of course, the how. Obviously, we got to talk to the FAA. We've got to talk to insurance companies. There's a lot of things that have to happen before the first race ever happens. But the first thing that has to happen is planes have to exist, and people need to want to race them. And then let's talk about the basically the social media aspect of this. I think can't be ignored. I think that with so in the modern landscape, the idea that you're going to be able to pay for an air race series with the gate at an air show is ludicrous, unless you're talking about maybe Oshkosh, and even then, I don't know that you can do it. So what we're really looking at as far as generating revenue, and not doing it off the back of pilots, right? So this is how racing gets paid for, right? You either have sponsors that are putting up huge amounts of money to be part of the show and have their name out there and have it on video every lap and that kind of thing. And there's almost always some of that. Then you have the gate, and that's the people that walk in the door, walk through the gate and pay their 10, 20, 50, 100, 300, whatever dollars to be able to watch the event live in person. That's declining. It's been declining for a long time. Not even NASCAR can fill a stadium. And so, I mean, honestly, I would be shocked if the gate was any consideration for having an air race at an air show. And then you have on the backs of the contestants, right? So that's where you're charging an exorbitant entry fee to each pilot or each team to race their planes in front of a crowd for the joy of racing. And maybe they get to win a butter dish or take home, half an entry fee or whatever in cash. That's which is a hard way to do it, and especially in something like this. So the social media aspect is where we can gain a lot of um, a lot of attention, which will bring people to the events, and by creating the in race videos and having and also working with the people building to have build videos and um, content from every portion of it, traveling to the events, what happens through the events, and all of this. That content, the stuff that's owned by the series, has a lot of potential to really pay for a lot of things. Um, and it would. I don't know how to do it yet. I'm not a corporate guy, and I don't in that way, and I don't know how to make that happen, but it can happen. It should happen. It probably will happen. There's a lot of ways to make money on this, and at the end of the day, I think that the racing airplanes is cool. I mean, airplanes are cool, and racing airplanes is really cool. So um, I don't think that it would be very hard. It's not hard to find sponsors. It's not hard to find people that want to be a part of it. It's hard to find people who want to be part of it enough to take the risk to build an airplane or to form a team when there's no existing series. And the hardest part is to start the series and get the rules out there, and get airplanes being built. So my closing thoughts here, which so my closing thoughts are, I'm really excited about the series, the prospect of it, and being involved in it. I don't know that I would build one of these airplanes. They don't appeal to me. I mean, it's just not. I'm looking at this um, as a methodology to lay the platform to bring back other inexpensive racing like Formula V, or something in between Formula I, the industrial two strokes, and Formula V, or maybe where Formula V kind of should have stayed, and it evolved into other stuff. So to me, this is all very exciting. It tickles my race, bone that I enjoy racing so much, and it makes it's almost as good. And at the end of the day, I think that a lot of people, I know that this video is pretty boring, but a lot of people are going to get really excited about this. I mean, the idea that you can build something that looks like a a race plane in your 1 or 2 car garage, or under a shed, under a carport, or in a shed. The idea that you can do that and then travel across the country and race it is really cool. It's really, really cool. And um, I'm hoping that it will really breathe life back into the general aviation. And with the with look, we all know those pilots that have a 172 or a Cherokee, or an old Beechcraft, that they fly 10 hours a year. It costs a lot. It's 8 gallons an hour at $6 a gallon is what Bill said last night. And you're just, it's not even $100 hamburger anymore. It's a real effort and a lot of expense to go fly. And this could make flying a lot more fun. It really has the potential to really reignite the idea of sport flying. I think that sport flying right now is basically dead. I think there's a little bit of it here and there, but it's on life support. And you look at the guys doing the stole drags and all of that, they got really popular, and then what happens is it gets really popular and gets really expensive, and then it declines in popularity because people can't afford it. There was, and people need to be able to afford it, and they need to be able to have fun doing it. And that's kind of where I think this is going to fall, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. And I really, that's just my impressions from last night's meeting. If you didn't catch it, you can stream the whole thing live, or you can stream the whole thing back in the live category on the Airplane Sheds YouTube page, and I encourage you to do so. I'm going to go ahead and bow out for the day. This was great. And I may have seemed a little bit discombobulated here and there, but the reality is that every time I talk about this, I refine things a little further, and little things occur to me. So you guys have a great day, and enjoy thinking about airplanes, and let's go play with some airplanes, because airplanes are cool, and it's just the way it is. You guys have a great day.